Hey, first of all, I'm really sorry this took so long. I had kind of a rush of clients and I needed to take care of them, make sure that everything was all right. The first thing is, my name is Christian Osmo, and this audit is going to walk you through some weaknesses and strengths your website may have in terms of design and optimization. Just for a bit of background, I've been a web designer for almost a decade. I currently call London home, but I grew up in the tech world of Silicon Valley, in like San Francisco area, California. I specialize in something called conversion rate optimization, which means that I build websites that sell better, they get more subscribers, and they gather more leads. More generally, they just convert better. That's where conversion comes from. I'm not here to comment on how good or bad your website is, because those terms are subjective. But what I will do is use my data-driven knowledge to kind of tell you what sells, what gets subscribers, and what doesn't. That sort of thing. So my first impressions are pretty good. I actually really like your site. I like this kind of format where you have lots of pictures and where it's all like clunked together. That's kind of a new thing, especially when you put this, when you mouse over those sort of things. Initially I really like the design. I think it looks really nice. Now, there are some things, I don't know exactly what you're going for, so it's all kind of going to depend, but this is the general format that I like to employ in any website, and I'll show you why in just a second. People generally, and when I say generally, I mean pretty universally, what they do when they get to a website is they read from left to right, and then they read from top to bottom, and they end up right here. So if what you want is to actually get more subscribers or to get more people taking a specific action, then the best format you can actually take is something like this, where you have the idea here, and this is the format for any good website, in my opinion, is you tell them exactly who you are right here, and then you tell them exactly why they should care. In this case, the best skill swapping tool for the lean entrepreneur. Right away, the user knows exactly what this website is, and the reason that they should care is because they want to be part of it, right? And so naturally, they end up right here. And so if you want subscribers, for example, like this right here, an example of this would be like, this is the best blog from the Philippines, or I make the best travel guides, or something like that. And then what you want to do is you want to offer them something in exchange for their email. If your goal was to get subscribers, for example. Now, that doesn't have to be your goal, but just as an example, you would say something like, the best travel blog in maybe not in the Philippines, but that maybe not something so vague, but something like I don't know, the best I don't know. I'm not sure exactly. I'm not good at coming up with this kind of stuff off the cuff, but if you were to say something really compelling, like the best, or what benefit does reading this blog have for the person? And then right here you say, I'm going to trade you something in exchange for your email address. Maybe it's a guide to the Philippines. So anybody looking for the best guide to the Philippines is going to stick their email in there, and it's going to be like a free product, for example. That's the best way to get subscribers. Now, if your goal is not subscribers, which is totally cool too, and I understand you're using I want to go back to the WordPress.com versus WordPress.org thing. So if your goal is something like subscribers, you really want a format that's something like this or something like this. Now, if we take this right here, let me just take a screenshot here. We have the same typical, format. And so you have from left to right and from top to the bottom, they're reading this. About 90% of the customers, or the readers, click this button, which is exactly what we want them to do. This is a sign-up form. So they click that right there, and what it does is it takes them down here, and which takes them to a sign-up form for exactly what we want. Now, not 90% of them don't fill out the sign-up form, but 90% of them click that button, which is exactly the first point, the start of making them sign up. So the key here is to take what you want them to do That could be to read more, that could be to enter their email address, that could be getting them to download something. It all depends on kind of the point of your blog. That's something you have to ask yourself. What do I want my readers to do? And then you give them something really compelling right here, who you are and why they should care, and then you take them for a ride right here. You tell them to do exactly what you want them to do. And that's the entire objective of the design. Now, there's nothing wrong with this design, especially if your only objective here is to kind of excuse me. Especially if your only objective is to kind of explore your own thoughts and feelings towards this. If all you're trying to do is to get somebody to read what you've written, then there's nothing wrong with this. Or sorry, if the only thing that you want is for them to kind of is to be able to express yourself, like this is just a personal expression. It's not really I want people to read this type of thing, but then this is totally fine. It's totally cool. But if you actually want subscribers, if you actually want a lot of readers, there's a lot that you can improve here. And I would suggest starting with something like this format. And then you can go on to, excuse me, then you can go on to something like this lower down the page. Other than that, it is great. So the next thing is, that's kind of the visual aspect of what I do. I don't think there's anything wrong with this. It just depends on exactly what you want out of your blog. Do you want to express yourself, or do you want subscribers? What do you want? If you just want to write and for writing's sake, then that's totally cool. And I think you're doing really well. If you actually want subscribers, I think that you should use a format more similar to this. But the next thing is, that I like to show is kind of the search engine optimization. This is the technical aspect of it. Now if I go here and I go, I'll just go ahead and let that load for a second. So what this is going to tell me is things about your website that you can improve. And this part of this is going to be, part of the problem here is going to be you and what you've done. But a big part of this problem is also WordPress.com, and I'll go into WordPress.com in a second. But here are the things that you need to improve. Meta description tag. This is quite important. This is basically telling Google what your website is. Now you have something, obviously. You can see right there, no distance is too far. But Google doesn't know specifically what that means in terms of like what your blog is. So it's cool that you have no distance is too far. Oops. It's cool that you have no distance is too far right there. And if you could leave that there, I think it would be fine. But when you put in a meta description that's kind of in the code, that tells Google who it is. And so it looks like WordPress.com just kind of puts that in there automatically. Keyword consistency. Now these all three of these are problems. So keyword consistency, Google is looking for certain keywords, something to indicate what your website is and like kind of how it works. Like what's the point here is what they're asking themselves. And so if you have a lot of different text and it's not cohesive, like you want to rate your blog on Google for like best travel blog Philippines search results, something like that, and you only have that written one time somewhere throughout the blog, Google doesn't really know that that's what your website is about, that that's what you want to rank for. So the best thing that I could suggest in terms of keyword consistency is picking a keyword that you want to rank for on Google, like Philippines travel blog, for example, and writing that at different places throughout your website, and not just in one place, mind you. Because a lot of people, they make this mistake where they just like put it in the title or something like that, or it's just right there. But Google doesn't know that that's really what your website is about. You have to put it here and here and here and in your content and in your meta tags and in your alt tags and everything. And that way Google knows that this is really what this website is about. Amount of content. You don't have a lot of content on your home page. You obviously have a lot of blog articles, but blog articles can rank independently of the home page. But the point here is that you need to add content to your home page so that Google can know what you're all about. What's the point here? Why should they care? What should people find when they search for your website? That's what Google cares about. And the amount of content is going to tell them that this website is important. The next thing is your image alt attributes, and this really needs to change because it says 11 out of 11 are missing the alt attribute. Now, alt tags to you and me, it doesn't mean a whole lot, because all it is like when an image doesn't show up, it's going to show the alt tag, which is just text that tells us what it is, right? And most of the time your images are going to show up, but sometimes they don't. And then Google also your website also uses alt tags to describe what the image is to, like, maybe a blind person who happens to be browsing your site. Now, alt tags generally don't matter most of the time, like 98% of the time in terms of visually. They don't matter because most people are not blind, and most of the time your images show up. However, Google loves to see them. So your website is going to have a harder time ranking if you are not using them, because Google loves to see them. And that's it. So keep going. Broken links. I'm not going to look through your broken links because it's possible. That's great that you have those, though. I think WordPress does it automatically. This is a problem. If you see how it looks like on mobile devices, what this should do is it should extend all the way over here, right? I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure that out. Now the problem here is that on mobile devices it is not showing up properly. So this is a big problem. It might have to do with the theme that you're using. I'm not really sure. You should probably change that. Either change the theme or change something that makes it so that this shows up properly in mobile devices. This all looks pretty good. This looks good, actually. This is surprisingly good. So let's see. You have a 0.04 second server response, which means that the server is responding quite well. 1.7 seconds, that's not too bad in terms of like your website is showing up. You could be doing better than that. The 2 seconds is kind of the threshold, so you're close to the threshold. You could be doing a bit better. Now, all website content loaded here, this is where you're having a problem. You're in the yellow. This could be, this is obviously down to WordPress because WordPress.com hosts your website. So that is going to be, something that you can change. Now, total page size 4.2 megabytes. That's not fantastic. I would like to see below 2 megabytes, and preferably around 1 megabyte. And I'll show you what that looks like in a second. It looks like the biggest problem to putting it below 2 megabytes is this right here. Your images by themselves are 2 megabytes right there, 2.3 megabytes. So if you were to erase that, if you just get rid of the images altogether, then you would automatically just be below 2 megabytes. It'd be 1.9, which is a lot better. Now, if you get rid of that screenshot, if I show you here, the reason that your website is like that, it has that many, is that big, is because of all these images. Images are really big, and so compared to like a JavaScript or a CSS file, for example. And so the best way that you can reduce your website size, for example, is to take, you've got this as an image. Let's see. Now here's these are all the featured images, right, on the front page here. Now the best way that you can reduce this size is to do something like this. I'll show you. If you go to compressor.io, and we upload an image, the image that I just downloaded from you, you'll see that it's 20 kilobytes, which actually isn't too bad, but when you put it on the compressor, you can reduce it to 7.62 kilobytes, which is a lot better. So if we download our file here, I'm on a mobile device here, which could be the problem. I haven't actually done that on a mobile device, but anyway, so the problem here, the biggest problem is your images. If you can use something like compressor.io to reduce your image size, you'll have a much easier time, and your website will be a lot faster and smaller in general. This looks pretty good. Like I said before, we've already talked. I mean, we've been talking about this the whole time. Oops. Optimizing images is going to make a difference. Optimize those images, get it on compressor.io, and you'll be doing a lot better. Now the next thing is minification. This is basically the same thing except for your code. So like your CSS or JavaScript, those are kind of text-based codes, and minification is basically just removing all of the empty space and reducing the file sizes. This isn't something that you can do on your own. It's something that WordPress, you're using WordPress.com, which means that it's probably in your theme, the fact that it doesn't do this, and so there's not a whole lot you can do about it, but if you can switch to WordPress.org, you can do that, and I'll get to that in just a minute. Social media, it's all... That's about it in terms of that. Why don't I... I've been talking this whole time about WordPress. You're using something called... Let me show you. You're using something called WordPress.com, which means that you have your domain .wordpress.com, which is cool. It's totally free. It's a great way to express yourself, and I totally encourage you to do that if that's like where your heart is set. You know, you've got your follow thing over here. You have something of a social media presence, because WordPress.com is people can discover the websites and everything. But there's something else that uses the same software called WordPress.org. And it's basically the same thing. You'll recognize this as kind of being the de facto, you know, like back end. However, you host it on your own web server. It's a lot more dynamic. There's a lot more software available for it. WordPress.com is more limited. WordPress.org is more, like I said, dynamic, and you can put it on your own server, which will make your website faster, will give you the ability to minify the code or optimize images and that sort of thing. So the best thing that I can do, that I can tell you, like if you were to go here, I already know that going back to your website that you have this theme that does this, right? And if you want to change it, you might have to go back to WordPress.org to get to a different theme, because I don't know exactly what's available for WordPress.com. But WordPress.org, there is a lot available, and here's what I use. Elegant themes. I use a theme called Divi for all of my projects because of how dynamic it is, and this is really awesome. So if I can suggest anything to you, it would be Divi. This is WordPress.com. And I would suggest this host right here. It's WPEngine.com. This is a WordPress host. And what they do is they host WordPress.org websites. And they do a really fantastic job. They make it really fast. It is a bit expensive. I'll show you right here. $29 a month is a bit expensive. You can I host all of my clients' websites for £17 a month. It's British pounds, which is about, like, I don't know, $23, $24, something like that. But it includes a lot more. But in terms of the service, it's similar. But $29 a month. That's WordPress.org hosting with WP Engine, and then Divi, which is all of my clients get Divi, but it does cost. It would cost you $89 per year, which is expensive again. But I think that's like the best setup that you can give anybody is Divi on WP Engine or on my hosting with my clients. Is fantastic. That would make your website a lot more dynamic. Would allow you to collect more emails for what are they called? For subscribers, and yeah. So I mean that's the best advice that I could give you. You have some issues to clear up, but I think that the biggest thing is that you need to switch. I mean, if you want to collect subscribers rather than just writing for fun, the best thing that you can do is switch from WordPress.com to WordPress.org, get your own host, and get your own WordPress theme, and kind of just go from there. If all that made sense, I mean, I hope it did. I know that there's like a lot scattered around there. There are some assumptions that I make that you know about. If you don't understand what I'm saying, please tell me. I can explain anything that you need me to do. You need me to, because I know it does get a little bit complicated, and some things, in order for me to not go into I can't go into detail about every little thing if just assuming you don't know anything, because I could go on for days. But if you have any specific questions, please let me know. I do not hesitate to ask. I can answer anything.